Meet the entrepreneur who's never actually had a boss throughout his career on today's episode of the Freedom Club Podcast.
Welcome to the Freedom Club Podcast, where we discover the fight for freedom, fulfillment, passion, and purpose. Your host is Curt Gallup certified strengths coach, an agency founder who is dedicated to coaching individuals seeking to level up their life and their businesses. The Freedom Club is about unlocking your talents, turning them into strengths, and crushing your objectives. You can learn more at curtmercadante.com. Welcome to the Freedom Club.
This is the Freedom Club Podcast. I am your host, Curt Mercadante. I am so happy you are here, whether this is your first time listening or your 91st time listening. That's right, we are fast approaching our 100th episode. And thank you so much for being here. You know, I'm not going to complain if you tell your friends, family, and colleagues about us, anyone who you think would benefit from our message of freedom and fulfillment. And yes, I will not complain if you go to iTunes and leave us a positive 5-star rating and review, because those are like currency to us, and they help us expand our reach around the globe. And our reach, by the way, is expanding week after week, month after month, and it's all because of you. So I am so grateful for you. Today we have a treat. I interview serial entrepreneur, SEO expert, founder of SEO, which stands for Search Engine Optimization agency Sure Oak. His name is Tom Casano. He's a fellow Italian, a paisan, and I really enjoyed our discussion about entrepreneurship, about freedom, about going your whole career to date without ever having a real boss. I really enjoyed it. I think you will too. And without further delay, here is my interview with Tom Casano. So Tom, thank you so much for coming on the Freedom Club Podcast. So great to have you here.
Yeah, Curt, I'm psyched to be here. This is going to be a good time.
Yeah, and yet for those listening, yesterday, Tom had me on his podcast, and Tom and I can get talking for so long that we talk for so long without recording it. Maybe we should just recorded that and put that on. But it was great, and that's part of, you know, LinkedIn, the real power in really in any social media is taking some of those relationships offline, getting to know people. Some of my best friends in the world I've made over the last 6 months just from LinkedIn. It's amazing.
Yeah, and you're just a cool guy to, sometimes you resonate with someone or you have synergy with someone and you feel like you've been friends forever or you know each other, and you go into these conversations like you and I do, Curt, where we just go layers and layers deeper, and then we realize we've been talking for an hour, but we haven't hit the record button. So I really enjoyed talking with you, and you have to tell me when you're in New York so we can hang out in person as well.
Yeah, likewise. I think someone has asked me to participate in an event in New York in January. So I'm hoping to get up there. Someday we gotta get a bottle of wine and have a long, or several long conversations there.
Some good Italian wine.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tom, we've talked about this yesterday and offline, et cetera, and you're an entrepreneur. You're founder, president, head poobah in charge of Sure Oak, which is an SEO company. I want to talk about that more. But the question I ask every client is, this is the Freedom Club Podcast, and I ask this question and it's always interesting listening to everyone's answers seem to have common threads, but a real unique twist. There's no right or wrong answer. And so it's real interesting. I learn so much every time I ask this question. But that is, what does the word freedom mean to you?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And for me, it's kind of, maybe it's more of a visual or this memory of like when you're a kid and it's summertime and there's no school and there's no schedule and no agenda. And you get up in the morning and you can do anything you want. You can go play whatever game you want to do. You can read a book. You can do anything. So for me, freedom is actually about free time and having the ability to choose what activity or what you want to do. And freedom for me is time freedom. And then there's financial freedom. But for me, I think financial freedom, the purpose of financial freedom is for time freedom. So you don't have to be working. You can do whatever the heck you want, whenever you want.
Interesting. And when we were talking yesterday, something came up that I had never, ever heard before, right? But it's going to be more and more common whether people like it or not, which is the fact that, my journey took me from 9 to 5 and this and that. And I always knew I wanted to start a company, but I went through that journey. And you said, I've never had a boss. And I said, what? Really? So tell me about that. Tell me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, well, I'm starting from when I graduated college. If we go back to when I was 17 and I was a busboy, I certainly had a boss there. But when I finished school, I'd studied philosophy in college, which I'm really glad I did. I think really deeply about a lot of the questions you ask as a coach to your clients and that sort of thing. So my dad is a carpenter. He's an entrepreneur, even if he doesn't think about it that way. He always just did his own business. So for me, I just very much align with that. So for the first year out of school, I wanted to be a rock star. And so I was playing gigs in bars and getting $50 for the gig if I was lucky. And I was, really, just really scrappy and living at home with my parents for a year, as us Italian sons tend to do. And then I started giving guitar lessons, and that was actually better money, 30, 40, $50 an hour. I kept moving up my rate, so that was cool. And then for the next 10 years, I traded in the stock market. And so I worked at a trading firm here in New York. And really, they gave me an account with money in it and, go make money, trade these stocks. Some days you'd make money, some you'd lose. And over time, the swings would be higher. So first it'd be hundreds of dollars and then thousands of dollars, which is really interesting. And they had no micromanagement. So you just sit in front of the computer, make money, and there's no boss to answer to. The only boss is, did you make or lose money? And then what does that mean for your paycheck at the end of the month? And then, I started another company, the life coaching one, Life Coach Spotter. And we can talk about that. And then the SEO agency, Shorook. So yeah, I've never really had a boss except for, if you go back in the day when I was bussing tables.
Interesting. Just a quick question, because I'm always interested in seeing patterns in terms of what causes people to trigger that entrepreneur gene in them, right? Were your parents entrepreneurs at all? Did anything stem from them?
Yeah, for sure. My dad, he certainly is an entrepreneur. He's a carpenter. He's always had his own business. He never scaled it up. He never really hired and grew, but he was a contractor. So he'd work with a plumber and electrician. But when he would hire someone to work for him, they wouldn't do as good of a job as he would. So, he had to do everything himself. I mean, that was, a strength and a weakness at the same time, a blessing and a curse, because he could never have, so yeah, I don't know if it's, I mean, it's, yeah, I know what you mean when you say it's a gene. Maybe it's not actually, right. Maybe it's nature and nurture, but I think that there's something to it that maybe, for me, creativity plays a big role in entrepreneurship, because it's the idea to create something out of nothing, or have a vision, or have an idea, or see an opportunity and go for it. I guess someone could argue that it's about there's that freedom of I'm going to be my own boss, or I'm going to make my own hours. But what you wind up realizing is you're still you still have to serve something, whether it's your customers and clients, whether it's, the outcomes you're trying to reach. You have to kind of be disciplined and do what it takes to get there. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but there obviously is a lot of freedom that can come along with it. But there's a lot of hard work and sacrifice and stuff that goes into it to get the outcomes that you want. Would you agree with that, or what's your feeling?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I've learned a lot over the years in terms of, I have one client, he's in his first part of his 30s. I don't know if it's considered mid 30s or not. And he's having to learn to say no to clients that don't fit the way he wants to live his life. And as an entrepreneur, I think that's a question that people often overlook of, I'm not going to set any boundaries with my clients because of this, that, the other thing. And I was that way for a long time until I hit the wall. I just put up a LinkedIn post about the anxiety attacks I used to have. And I thought it was okay for a while. I thought grinding was what it was all about, rise and grind. You got to do the grind. You got to do this. And I had built my own prison. And so I try to caution people, it's okay for a while, but look out for the warning signs. Look out if it's not aligning with your family, with yourself, if your health is going, if you're, those are things that are very important. And by the way, once you hit that wall, it's going to have a very detrimental impact on your company. So one of the things that I learned the hard way was to set boundaries.
Well, and I think that's something that when you're starting out, if you're trying to, pay your bills or make ends meet, you know what I mean? There's this period where you might be
Sure.
struggling, you're trying to survive, but then you might hit a certain goal where, you know, you're able to save some money. And then you can realize, I'm not really happy because I'm working on a Saturday and I want to be spending time with my family. And you start to realize things that feel off, you know, I haven't worked out in a long time. So therefore maybe I should, you know, work less, maybe I'll make a little less money, or ideally you can get more done in less time so you can have everything. But that's the value of coaching. As you know, Curt, I'm a big fan and proponent of coaching because there's so much you realize, you know, when you step outside at a higher level and you're like, wait a second, this doesn't make sense. Like, why am I working 12-hour days when I can get all this done in 8 hours or 6 hours?
Yeah, no. And I think a lot of it is, you know, when I left my 9 to 5, I would get my stuff done in 4 days, or I'm sorry, 4 hours, because I'm a very efficient worker. And because that 9 to 5 had been beat into my head, or I worked in DC, so I'd have to leave at 7 and I get home at 9, right? I was like, well, what am I doing? Something's wrong with me. You'd get comments, oh, must be nice. So I started filling my day up with BS. And what I see a lot, you know, you see this in Silicon Valley with the caffeine, Red Bull fuel. I worked on political campaigns for 20 years. And there was that old adage that it's not a successful political campaign if the lights aren't on at 10:30 or Sunday morning. And you know what that fuels? It doesn't fuel actual productivity. It fuels the lights being on and people drinking beer and eating pizza and extending their day, because there's something called Parkinson's law, where the time to complete a project equals. So you really have to look at those BS inputs that, you know, don't really impact it. The other thing is, so for a long time, I had that kind of fear of if a client calls at 9 and calls at 10. And what I learned was, or responding to emails, I started doing some surveys. This was about 5 years ago, on email specifically. And I sent it out on LinkedIn. I sent it out to friends, doctors, lawyers, you know, consultants, all this. What is your expectation, like reasonable expectation to get a response? There were some people who said 24 hours. So the sweet spot was 2.5 hours. So I started batching the times at which I answered emails. Then I started batching calls. I stopped taking calls. And what I learned was, listen, as a coach, it's easier to set boundaries. This is when I do the calls. This is when I don't do calls, right? With an agency, it's like, oh, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I learned that agency clients can be a little bit like pets. If you train them and set expectations, if you don't answer calls after 5, because a lot of times we've been in our head, I got to answer it or they're going to fire me. Sometimes clients just get something off their chest at 5 and it's not an emergency. So sometimes we create those fires in our head and they're not really fires, but
yeah, 100%. You're right. You said this the other day and it's true. Setting those boundaries and training your clients, it just resets the expectations. I had a client that was texting me, and he was an important client, and I really, you know, he really matters and I care about him, but I want to set that boundary, you know, hey, sorry, I'm using text messages personally and trying to separate, you know, he understood, and people will test and people will try. And if you're willing to answer the phone at, you know, 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, you're kind of, you know, creating that expectation going forward. And the other thing you said there, which I really agree with you on, Curt, is, like you have this concept of like focusing on outcomes versus like the amount of time. And I think that's so important. I'm realizing that in my own business. And a lot of it is also about alignment and about focus and realizing whatever your goals are, working back what'll get you there. So for this whole last quarter, we've been working on all these marketing initiatives and all these different things. And I've just come to realize, like in the last several days, like none of this means anything. You know, for my own business, for our SEO agency, we need to generate leads, you know, and it's very simple. Like we need to generate leads of people who are looking for SEO, who are interested today. So all this other, you know, it's great to have like the website and the marketing automation and all these like things around it. But at the end of the day, if we can just get like so laser focused and so aligned, then maybe instead of working a 12-hour day, I can work a 4-hour day because I can drive results in less time. So it's almost not necessarily productivity in that sense of getting a lot of stuff done in less time, but it's also more about how do you get to those results and how do you get to those results in less time so you have more time freedom, to take it back to where you began.
Yeah, and the right stuff done. You know what you meant, and on that, not just for you, but your clients are going to appreciate it, because I know there's some firms out there that focus on a lot of the fluff, and that gets them going for 6 months, and then the client's like, right, but I wanted this. So if you focus on outcomes for your clients, they're happier and it's less churn, right? It's not like, all right, we're going to work with this guy 6 months and he's going to get sick of us.
100%. Yeah. We have a client who kind of like said, I want this service and this is what, and it didn't make sense strategically. We tried to tell him, you got his other stuff, but he didn't listen. And now he's like unhappy. He's like, I'm not getting the results. Like, well, you could have listened to us. We could help you get the ultimate outcome you want.
So tell me a little bit about Sure Oak and how you got there. And I mean, you talked about your journey, but you mentioned the Life Coach Spotter, and then Sure Oak and SEO, which for those of you listening who don't know, it's search engine optimization. I used to call it Google Juice, but
Yeah, for sure. So 5 years ago, I started a business for life coaches to actually generate leads for life coaches. So, if you just want to do life coaching and you don't want to do marketing, it's really nice to have, people looking for life coaches coming to you, inbound, finding you. That's like everyone's dream. And so it took me a really long time to figure out all the pieces of the marketing, funnel and everything on the website and where the traffic's coming from and converting them and then giving them over to the coaches. But the biggest hurdle I hit the whole journey was SEO, right? So search engine optimization, getting traffic from Google for free, because when someone is searching for find a life coach or whatever it is, you'll come up in the search results, they'll click and they'll come to your website. So it's a very valuable thing, but it's also a very hard thing. It's not very transparent because Google's algorithm is a black box. They don't want people manipulating it or spamming it or trying to, just take advantage of them. So it took me a very long time to figure out how to get traffic from Google. With that business, the traffic eventually went from 5,000 a month, or it took me a long time just to get there, right? There's a zero for a very long time. So, 3, 4, 5,000 a month. And then over a couple month period, it shot up to like 25,000 visitors per month organically every month. And it's nice because talk about time freedom. It's passive. People are coming to the website. I have it automated. So when someone's looking for a coach, they get like matched up with the coaches and I make money out of it, not have to do anything. It's like the ideal scenario, like, oh, great, I can just sit on the beach and, have all this money coming to me. But, for me, I live in Manhattan and I have a daughter now and it's just not going to pay the bills here. So hence, once I learned that, I realized I should take, this has so much more value to other businesses that have higher ticket items that they're selling. So with Life Coach Spotter, a lead might be worth $50. But if we can grow the traffic for a business that, has millions in revenue and we can increase, numbers by 10, 20, 30%, the value there is so much greater. So basically that's how Sure Oak was born. It's an SEO agency and that's what we do. It's link building, keyword research and optimization and technical stuff. And so we've grown a lot in the last year and a half at the expense of my freedom, my time freedom, but I do see these things as kind of like, if I'm over investing or putting more time and more hustling, last year and this year, I believe it's going to pay off just like it did with that Life Coach Spotter business. That business made nothing for like 2 or 3 years. And I wish I'd counted the hours, Curt, because if I could add up all the hours, none of it made sense, and I learned so much that I'm reapplying to this business and you don't know that along the way in the journey. So it's hard to quantify and it's really tough as an entrepreneur because even I think, this morning I felt kind of stuck or kind of sad or kind of like, man, like, what's the point of all this, Right. And there's no exact path laid out for you. You got to figure out the path in this forest and you get lost and you start, realize you're off course. And, that's why having coaching or having help along the way is just so powerful.
Do you, you mentioned something about, Life Coach Spotting. There was nothing that came in for 2 years. And
it was like 0 revenue a month. And then eventually came like 300, 500 a month, but that's nothing to live on. Like you can't live on that.
No. Yeah. And I there's a lot of folks out there, a lot of people, and this applies not just to starting a business, but even for like, I'm going to produce content on LinkedIn, right? I always like to say that consistency beats intensity. There's some people who go out. When I ran cross country, I would go out sometimes and I'd be leading for the first mile and I just completely wore myself out and then I get 50th, right? There's some people who go out there and they do that and they don't get results right away and then they give up or they burn themselves out. So it's a testament. I mean, and it's probably your example with any company that you've built that you're not going to get immediate results. You got to just keep hammering away with that 20-mile march every day, right?
Yeah, I think you said a lot of key things in there. I'm actually getting chills and also the room is freezing cold, but I'm also getting chills I think from what you said because there's a huge element of truth about perseverance and persistence. There's also a huge part of it is like intentionality and belief and having conviction and knowing, even if it sucks today and it sucks and it's, if you can make those incremental improvements over time. But then on the flip side, there's, when I think of for marketing for my own agency, there's lots of experiments. So we might try out 5 different marketing channels. Maybe we'll try out LinkedIn. Maybe we'll try out Google ads. Maybe we'll try out Facebook ads and organic. The problem is there's so many different opportunities and ways you can go. But the other thing is if you try out too many things and you don't go all in on something, you're never going to get the results because you're just putting in like a half effort, And really, when you can maximize in this example, like a marketing channel or whatever it is, it's like when you're all in, when you're committed, when you optimize it, when you absolutely kill it. And you've done that with LinkedIn. And that's why it's working so well for you. Like you're putting the time in, you're consistent. If you stop doing it somewhere along the way, or you were doing 10 different like things like, oh, my friend said he makes money with SEO, I should do SEO.
Right.
So it's amazing to see what the success you've had on LinkedIn.
It's again, it's been that consistency, and 90 days of posting a video last year. And the first, I got goose eggs for 2 months, but I know people who they'll do one video. I'm like, I didn't get a client. It's like, okay, it's that consistency.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of folks who listen to this, and who I coach they got a side hustle. They're starting a side hustle. They're ready to take that leap wherever they're at in that entrepreneurial process. As someone who has built several companies, what is the one thing that you would tell them if you had 60 seconds to tell them something? What would you tell them?
We talked about this a bit yesterday. A lot of people see it as a risk starting a company or making that leap. I don't. I see it as, ideally you have some buffer, some savings in your bank, right? And if you're working a full-time job and hustling on the side, even consulting, if you can get some clients or if you get some cash flow coming in and you slowly build that up to the point where you can build yourself some runway, you don't have to quit your job, or you can work in the evenings or the weekends. It depends on your lifestyle and what you're up to. Or maybe you can go part-time at your job, which my wife did not that long ago. And it's really nice. So she still has like, more than 50% of the income from the job, but now she has the flexibility to work on her own thing. And so you can like transition and shift, decrease the time of your job, hopefully, or maybe you have to make this like either or binary decision, like quit the job and now you go full into your thing. But either way, I don't think it has to be this big risk and this big jump. And I never felt it that way. And I don't see the risk. It's like, you can always go back and get another job, right. Maybe it won't be the same job, maybe it won't pay as much, but like, okay, so, you make a little bit less, but like, it was worth it. So I don't see it as this like huge thing. It's just slowly make more money with your business over time. And then you can, say goodbye to your boss.
Goodbye. So Tom Casano, thank you so much for being on the show. People want to learn more about you, about Sure Oak. Where should they go?
Yeah, you can find me all over the web, Curt. You can Google my name, Tom Casano. You can find me on LinkedIn. My company name is Sure Oak. It's SUREOAK, like an oak tree. You and I are connected on LinkedIn. So yeah, find me anywhere. Say hello. Connect with me on LinkedIn, or thank you so much for having me on. And I look forward to anyone who has any questions, needs help with SEO, or had a smidgen of inspiration in them, and you inspire me, Curt. I'd be happy to hear about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. I'll put links to all those links in the show notes. And thank you so much.
I love you.